You ever watch South Park and think, okay, there's no way this is based on something real? Yeah, about that. Turns out, some of the craziest stuff they've ever done actually happened, like purity rings pushed by Disney, a cult that literally believes in space volcanoes, and a US Attorney General storming a house dressed as a bunny. I'm not kidding. These weren't jokes, they were headlines. Let's talk about 3 times South Park told the truth before anyone else did. So here's the thing. South Park has always been crazy, right? But sometimes it's not parody. It's journalism in disguise. Today, we're going over 3 episodes that turned out to be way too real. We've got a religion that's literally science fiction, pop stars selling purity with a smile, and a US official who went full Easter bunny. Yeah, all of that actually happened. Let's start with the first one. Let's start with one of the wildest stories South Park ever told. Remember the episode where Tom Cruise locks himself in a closet? Yeah, that one. South Park didn't invent that. The volcanoes, the souls, the alien dictator Xenu. That's actual doctrine. They even wrote it right on screen. This is what Scientologists actually believe. And guess what? They weren't lying. L. Ron Hubbard, the founder, claimed that 75 million years ago, Xenu blew up billions of souls inside volcanoes, and now those souls cling to humans. It's science fiction, turned into a religion. The church freaked out. Tom Cruise threatened to sue. Isaac Hayes, the voice of Chef, quit. Comedy Central pulled the episode, and then aired it again with a new title, Trapped in the Closet. Again. South Park 1. Censorship. That's when people realized the show wasn't just mocking reality, it was reporting it. Here's where it gets even weirder. Scientology isn't a tiny fringe thing. It's officially recognized as a religion in the US. They even pulled off a spy operation against the IRS in the 70s to get tax-exempt status. True story. And some of Hollywood's biggest names are in it. Tom Cruise, John Travolta, Elizabeth Moss, Beck. Cruise once called Scientology the only way to truly help people. Travolta credits it for saving his career. But when South Park dropped Trapped in the Closet, the church went nuclear. They pressured Comedy Central to pull the episode. They lost Chef, and Trey and Matt just laughed and aired it again. Absolute power move. Okay, now brace yourself, because this is where it stops being funny and starts being straight up sci-fi. Auditing. Members hold metal cans connected to a device called an e-meter. It's basically a lie detector that measures your soul. They call it spiritual therapy. I call it data collection. The bridge to total freedom. A spiritual ladder with levels like a video game. You literally pay to level up. Hit level 3 and boom, they drop the Xenu lore. Top tier? Taught only on a cruise ship in the Caribbean called the Free Winds. Sea Org, the elite order. Members sign a 1 billion year contract. Yes, billion with a B. They wear naval uniforms and live under military-style discipline. Silent birth. They believe words during labor traumatize the baby. So mothers are told to give birth in total silence. Even Tom Cruise defended it. Disconnection. If you doubt the church, you're ordered to cut off friends and family. They pretend you don't exist. Fair game. Critics can be spied on, harassed, or sued into oblivion, and it's literally written in their policy. At this point, you stop asking, is this satire? And start asking, how is this legal? So when South Park said they actually believe this, it wasn't a joke. Between space dictators, billion-year contracts, and Hollywood megastars preaching freedom from a cruise ship, the real world is crazier than any episode. And that's just story number 1. Ready for the next religion? South Park got right? Next up, one of the catchiest episodes ever made. Dumb, 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 dumb. You already hear it, right? That's all about Mormons? The episode that tells the origin story of the Mormon Church. through a literal musical number. Here's the twist. South Park didn't exaggerate anything. The song, the golden plates, the magic stones, the skeptical wife, the translation that conveniently disappears, all of that actually happened. Joseph Smith really claimed he found gold plates buried by an angel named Moroni. He said he translated them with seer stones in a hat. Martin Harris financed the translation. His wife, Lucy, called him out and hid the first manuscript. And Joseph Smith said God told him not to retranslate it because Satan would compare the versions. That's not a parody. That's Mormon history. South Park just turned it into a song, and they even made it kind of catchy. Here's the crazy part. South Park was accurate. Even Mormon scholars admit the show nailed the key details. Joseph Smith really said he translated the Book of Mormon by looking into stones inside a hat. And yes, he had followers who copied every word. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that's the official name, now has over 17 million members worldwide. They're one of the fastest growing religious groups in America, especially in Utah, where they basically built an entire state. And believe it or not, they loved the episode more than they hated it. When the Book of Mormon musical came out on Broadway, written by the same guys who made South Park, the actual Mormon church bought ad space in the playbill. It said, "You've seen the play, now read the book." Iconic response. Now, let's talk about the real-life side, because Mormon culture has some traditions that might sound unique. Temple garments. Members wear sacred underclothes symbolizing purity and devotion. Outsiders call them magic underwear, but to Mormons, it's a personal covenant with God. Baptism for the dead. They perform proxy baptisms. One person gets baptized on behalf of someone who's already died to offer salvation in the afterlife. Word of wisdom. No coffee, no alcohol, no tea. It's part of their health code. But energy drinks? That's a gray area. Family. First, Mormons believe families can be sealed together for eternity, literally forever. That's why family is central to their entire faith. And yes, they still send out missionaries, 2 guys in white shirts and ties knocking on doors. You've probably seen them, and they're always absurdly polite. So yeah, South Park didn't mock a cult here. They actually captured a faith that's both weirdly strict and kind of wholesome. At the end of the episode, Stan asks, "So, their story makes no sense?" And the Mormon kid smiles and says, "Yeah, but it makes my family happy." That line, Trey Parker said it's one of the most honest things they ever wrote. Because South Park didn't just roast Mormons. It showed how a weird story can still create a good community. Faith is complicated, but in this case, it's also kind of adorable. Up next, purity rings, Disney, and teenage hypocrisy. Buckle up. All right, last one, and this one feels straight out of a Disney Channel fever dream. The episode's called The Ring. It starts with Kenny's girlfriend talking about how she's saving herself. And next thing you know, the Jonas Brothers show up, preaching abstinence while spraying girls with white foam. It's hilarious, it's disturbing, and it's 100% based on real life. In the late 2000s, purity rings were everywhere. Disney stars, Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, the Jonas Brothers, all wore them. They said it was about waiting for marriage. South Park saw through it. The episode basically says, this isn't about purity, it's about selling sex to teenagers while pretending to be holy. And they nailed it. Mickey Mouse literally becomes the villain, screaming at the Jonas Brothers to sell the dream of purity while raking in cash from teenage fans. That's not satire, that's marketing. Here's what's wild. Purity rings weren't a joke, they were a movement. It started in the 1990s with American evangelical churches pushing true love weights. Teens pledged abstinence and wore silver rings engraved with Bible verses. By the mid-2000s, the pop industry picked it up. Disney quietly backed the image. Squeaky clean stars, no scandals, big family brand. The Jonas Brothers wore purity rings for years. Joe Jonas later said it was a PR decision. Miley Cyrus and Selena Gomez had them too. Even Britney Spears' early career started with a similar virgin image until, well, it didn't. So when South Park dropped the ring in 2009, it wasn't attacking kids. It was calling out a billion-dollar hypocrisy machine. And they did it before anyone else dared to. So, what did the purity ring thing actually mean? For teens, it was supposed to symbolize saving yourself for marriage. For the church, it was a way to control desire through guilt. For Disney, it was brilliant branding, clean, innocent, perfect idols who still looked hot, flirted in music videos, and sold millions. The real-life purity events looked like youth concerts. Kids signed pledges, prayed on stage, and got rings as tokens of moral strength. Some of these groups even made purity balls, where daughters danced with their dads, promising to stay pure until marriage. Yeah, that's a real thing. Meanwhile, the same industry was using those innocent images to sell desire. South Park turned that contradiction into art and called out Disney's hypocrisy before social media did. Mickey Mouse yelling, "We're selling purity," hits harder when you realize that's exactly what they were doing. So, yeah, South Park made fun of purity rings, but the punchline is that everything in that episode actually happened. It wasn't a parody of teen culture, it was teen culture. And once again, South Park didn't just predict reality, it exposed it. From alien souls to holy underwear to Disney's purity propaganda, every time they mocked something too absurd to be true, it turned out to be 100% real, which kind of makes you wonder, what's next? Alright, if you thought the purity rings were wild, this one's darker. In Cartman Joins NAMBLA, little Eric decides he wants older, more mature friends, so he goes online and joins a group called NAMBLA. Sounds like classic South Park insanity, right? Except, NAMBLA was real. It stood for North American Man-Boy Love Association, a group that literally campaigned to legalize sex between adults and minors. And yes, it existed. Founded in the late 70s, NAMBLA claimed it was about freedom of expression. The FBI called it what it was, child exploitation. So when South Park made that episode, it wasn't exaggeration. It was a direct hit on a real organization that had been hiding in plain sight. The show aired in 2000, and NAMBLA publicly collapsed just a few years later. Coincidence? Maybe not. Here's how insane this gets. NAMBLA wasn't underground. It held public meetings in the US and had members in major cities. Several real-world cases, including kidnappings and assaults, were later linked to people affiliated with the group. In 1994, Time magazine literally called it America's most reviled organization. After the South Park episode dropped, the group became a cultural punchline, and mainstream media finally noticed it existed. Trey Parker and Matt Stone said later that this was one of those times they made an episode thinking it was absurd, and then realized reality was worse than what they wrote. Which, honestly, sums up the entire show. And if that wasn't enough, there's Quintuplets 2000. Remember the one with the 5 Romanian acrobat girls and the insane custody battle? That whole plot was ripped straight from real headlines. The Alien Gonzalez case of 2000. A 6-year-old Cuban boy who became the center of a national tug-of-war between his relatives in Miami and the US government. South Park released their episode days after the actual armed raid that rescued Elian. And they even used the real Attorney General, Janet Reno, dressed in a bunny suit, storming a house. Real photo, real moment. South Park just made it look even more absurd by changing nothing. So yeah, we laugh at South Park for being ridiculous. But half the time, the real world's already worse. A cult that believes in space volcanoes, a prophet with magic stones, pop stars selling purity rings, and a real organization called NAMBLA. You can't write this stuff unless you're Trey Parker and Matt Stone. And that's the point. South Park works because it doesn't invent insanity. It just holds up a mirror. The reflection's the scary part. You know what's crazy? We always say South Park goes too far. But the truth is, it doesn't go far enough. Every time the show takes aim at something insane, reality's already 5 steps ahead. A religion built on alien volcanoes, a prophet with golden plates, pop stars selling chastity like it's merch, a real-life club that Cartman accidentally joined. You think they're exaggerating, and then you Google it. Maybe that's why South Park still hits harder than most documentaries, because it doesn't have to invent anything. It just shines a spotlight on how absurd the real world already is. So, yeah, maybe the joke's on us. Which episode did you think was too wild to be true? Drop it in the comments. I'll feature the best ones in part 2. And hey, if you made it this far, you already know what to do. Hit like, subscribe, and keep your purity ring ironic.